Hello there! What's your favorite overused aesthetic? Mine is Vaporwave, of course. It almost killed my channel. But I have found a brand new love for this aesthetic, mostly due to Vaporware games. Now, Vaporware games are not to be confused with Vaporwave games. I looked at some of those Vaporwave games and I was throwing up in a bathroom within minutes. No, Vaporware games are something completely different. They're like shovelware, if you know we lived in a world where shovelware didn't exist. Could you imagine living in a world where the Powerpuff Girls Relish Rampage didn't exist? I don't think I could do it. Vaporware games are games that have been announced at one point but have either gone through lengthy delays, have been cancelled entirely, or there just haven't been any updates about them. The definition of a Vaporware game differs from person to person. Something like Metroid Prime 4 could be considered Vaporware because it's been almost 4 years since it was first announced, and 2 years since it was announced development would restart entirely. And besides that announcement of development restarting, we have gotten basically no updates about the game. I think we'll have a better chance of getting an update from the Zodiac Killer before we get something from Metroid Prime 4. But even then, it hasn't been too long since we got something from Metroid Prime. There have been much more extreme examples of Vaporware games in history. Some of these games have straight up gone a whole decade of falling off the face of the earth until they came back, and there are others that just never got any type of resolution. These are the games that just have pain in the ass development cycles, and I'll be discussing some of them. You might think Breath of the Wild 2 could be considered a Vaporware game, but no, not really, since we got an update recently in a Nintendo Direct, and it's been confirmed we'll get some news about the game later this year. But something like Daemon X Machina definitely falls under the label of Vaporware. But what about that Game Freak game, you know, the one about the town and stuff? I haven't heard anything about that one in months. Wow, I really need to keep up with gaming news a lot more. I just found out that plumber guy died. Okay, so first off, we have Killing Day, a first-person shooter that was being developed by Ubisoft for the PlayStation 3. It was announced in 2005 and was supposed to be released at the end of 2006. The game went through a period of time without any updates until Ubisoft announced the game had been cancelled. This wasn't the end of the story though, because a few years later in 2009, Ubisoft filed a trademark for Killing Day, making some people think that the game had restarted development. It did not restart development. It happened again in 2013, making people think that this time it would actually be back in development. Let me check how many copies of the game I have. Yeah, that's what I thought. But there are other more notable Vaporware games like Doom 4. The game was announced back in 2007 and was supposed to be a reboot of the franchise. The game received no updates for 4 years besides some leaked footage, and oh, it was bad. Yeah, the main problem with this game was that it just didn't feel like a Doom game. It was just a shooter game that looked like Doom. Could you imagine if someone took a Digimon game slapped Pikachu on the cover and called it a Pokemon game? Well, that's what this was, just with less brutal violence. Then in 2011, Bethesda rode in on a white horse and killed the game off. This would lead to the development of the 2016 reboot of Doom, which received immense critical acclaim. But a blind game journalist who played it on the Switch with one Joy-Con with drift thought it was too hard, so it's actually a terrible game. You know what I hate more than Star Fox Assault? Nothing. Yeah, the top 3 things I hate the most are genocide, world hunger, and Star Fox Assault. No wonder I got kicked out of the UN headquarters. Well, Star Fox Assault was a game that happened, which could be said about a lot of Star Fox games nowadays, mostly the ones that are between -1 and 1. But Star Fox Assault was just a very different take on Star Fox being a 3D shoot-'em-up. This game was just kinda meh to most people, but that's not what I'm here to talk about. Back when this game was first announced, Nintendo also said they were working on a Star Fox arcade game. This was supposed to be in development alongside Star Fox Assault and would be directly connected to it. But Star Fox Assault was released in 2005, and there has been absolute silence about the arcade game. It's safe to say that it's definitely been cancelled, although there has never been any official statements about it. It's kinda like me with Sydney Sweeney. She hasn't officially said she's not in love with me, but I don't think it's happening. God, I really need to make some cash. I can't keep being broke. I'll have to start eating at Arby's. What the fuck is a meat mountain? Here's a plan. How about I raise $300 million from 3 million people in order to make a game and a spin-off and then never release it? That's an easy bag. Yeah, I would like a meat mountain to go. Is burning money too cliche? Well, here's Star Citizen. Star Citizen is a game that was first announced as a Kickstarter in 2012, and it was wildly successful, raising over $2 million by 2013, making it one of the most successful Kickstarters ever. I can't even raise $1 to buy a Soulja Boy console. This game was supposed to be a spiritual successor to Freelancer, which was a spaceship combat simulator which had a solid fan base. Star Citizen was advertised as an epic space adventure, and wow, that's a bold idea, definitely never been anything like it. But what exactly made this a Vaporware game? It's been 9 years since it was first announced, and there is absolutely no foreseeable release date. It was planned to be released in 2014, but I think they meant to say 2040. And it's safe to say wasting money on a spaceship combat simulator is not one of America's favorite pastimes because people were mad. There were tons of backers requesting refunds, but most of the time they could not get one because the terms and services of the game said that it could only be refunded if the game was abandoned completely. It was right next to the part that said downloading the game entitles you to a free STD of your choosing. STD is not optional. You know, that was pretty scummy, but you know what makes up for company dishonesty? Bite-sized demos. Yeah, the Star Citizen developers thought it would be a good idea to release modules that would showcase different parts of the gameplay to people who had backed the game. It's not a fully finished game at all, but it's better than nothing, I guess. You know what's worse than falling for one scam? Falling for 2 of them. I can't even afford Arby's anymore. Yeah, they thought a good way of getting people to stop being mad about not getting a game they paid for is by releasing a second game that they are also not going to get. Squadron 42 was supposed to be a single-player story game that was supposed to take part in the same universe as Star Citizen. It was supposed to have an all-star cast with Mark Hamill, Gary Oldman, Andy Serkis, and Henry Cavill. Oh, that's where the $300 million went. This game was supposed to be released sometime in 2020, and there is currently no video game with Superman fighting Golem and Luke Skywalker in space, so yeah, that didn't happen. This game, like its main version, also has no specified release date, so yeah, it's not releasing anytime soon. It's safe to say that Star Citizen has had a messy development schedule, and it will probably continue that way, but it's nothing compared to the development of Duke Nukem Forever. Duke Nukem Forever was announced in 1997 and was supposed to be the next game in the series after Duke Nukem 3D. Duke Nukem Forever was a piece of Vaporware for the longest time because after its announcement in 1997 and sneak peeks in the following year, it never came out. In 2001, the developers, 3D Realms, said it would be released when it's done. That's what I used to tell all my teachers when they asked me if I did my homework. Did I mention that I'm broke? Well, they sure kept their promise because it would take 6 years for any footage of the game to be shown. Another teaser was shown, and yeah, it's early PS3 level graphics alright, but due to complications with the development studio, the game went missing once again for several years, until Gearbox took over development of the game and finally released it in 2011, 14 years after it was initially announced. But as Miyamoto once said, a delayed game is eventually good, but a rushed game is forever bad. And he was right. No, he wasn't. That shit was trash. But moving over to games that could actually be good, we have Beyond Good and Evil 2. Beyond Good and Evil is to many one of the greatest games ever made. But have they even played Carnival games for the Wii? That one has a VR mode. Beyond Good and Evil was a critical success, although its sales weren't the greatest. But the game was so good that obviously people wanted a sequel for it. So in 2007, Ubisoft got to work and started planning one. Its existence was a bit unknown at the time, but there were reports saying that the game was on hold and others saying the development was going as planned. And as it turns out, development of the game had to be stopped in order to shift their focus to Rayman Legends. Reminds me of when my doctor couldn't perform my heart surgery because he had to go work on 1-2 Switch. In 2016, there were images released of the game that showed that it was indeed in development. And in E3 2017, the game was officially announced and was going to be a prequel to the original game. So obviously that meant the game would be releasing soon, right? Hi, I also skipped the first 8 minutes of every video. Yeah, no, it's 4 years from then and the game has not seen the light of day. It's still unknown which consoles it's going to be releasing on. There was even a rumor it would be exclusive to the Nintendo Switch, but those rumors were proven to be false. Another game to go through a similar situation to this is The Last Guardian. The game actually started development in 2007 under the name Project Trico and was announced at E3 2009, but the studio behind the game was relatively small and were having a hard time bringing the game to life. It was for those reasons that the game could not be released for the PS3 and instead had to be changed in order to run on the PS4. That and the fact that the head developer, Fumito Ueda, decided to leave Sony meant that there were many complications in developing it. But in the end, the game was eventually released in 2016 to mostly positive reviews and keeping the same vision that the original gameplay had shown, but the game never truly felt like it was meant for the new generation of consoles and just felt bogged down in the past. Man, the PS3 had the History Channel Battle for the Pacific on their console. I think The Last Guardian is a step up, so in the end the long development cycle was kinda worth it, I guess. But perhaps the most infamous case of Vaporware is Half-Life 2 Episode 3.
Half-Life? That's not a real thing.
Half-Life 2 was a very successful game by Valve, but the game took over 6 years to make, so Valve thought it would be a good idea to think of a faster way of releasing content, so they decided to continue the story of Half-Life 2 with episodic releases. So basically the continuation of the game would be split across different episodes, 3 of them to be exact. The first episode was released in 2006, and the next episode was released a year later in 2007. Yeah, there was a lot of controversy around this one, mostly due to the fact that episode 2 ends on a cliffhanger. Many people thought they were just taking their time with this one, but no, that's not at all what happened. There was virtually no news about episode 3 besides some leaked concept art and information from gaming insiders. So fans of the game thought the story would just be continued in Half-Life 3. Those fans are now in prison. There were tons of plans for Half-Life 3, but most of the time the developers were not completely sold on any of the ideas, so nothing ever came from them. It's still unlikely that the 3rd episode of Half-Life 2 is released, but crazier things have happened.
Yeah, believe it or not, there's a lot of people that don't like Vaporwave. I report all those people to the FBI. I can't call 911 anymore.
So yeah, that's Vaporware games. There's truly not that many of them that fit the exact definition of Vaporware. A lot of them do get some type of official updates, but even the ones that don't still get that information leaked. It's quite fascinating to me that games can be in development for so long and still never end up releasing to the public.
Vaporware games are cool, but Vaporwave is much cooler. I mean, it says it right there. World's #1 Vaporwave fan. Wait, that's an R, not a V. This shit is fucking ugly.